Hey guys, it's Joe with Path to Greener Living, and last time I showed you how to assemble the Lifetime Garden Box. That's what we've got right here. Now my intent was to show you how to assemble it on one weekend, and then the next weekend show you how to build your own soil for it. Well, the weather hasn't really been cooperating, so it's been a while since that last video came out. Sorry about that, but there wasn't much we could do about it. So today we're going to go ahead and show you how to build the mix that you're going to put into this, because you just don't want to throw dirt into it. And then we're going to show you how to plant some potatoes either in this video or the next. We'll see how long it goes. Okay, so over here we have our garden box. And right next to it we have this nice big blue tarp. Now, you're going to want a tarp to mix all this stuff on. Technically you don't have to, but if you're doing this on a lawn or if you're doing this over here on this pea gravel like I am, I don't want my mix to get mixed in with my gravel or with my lawn. But if you were doing this on raw dirt, that would probably be okay for you. So we've got a tarp here. This is also going to help us with the mixing process. So next thing you want to keep in mind, see how close I am over to my garden box? Yeah, that's a big deal because this stuff is heavy. You don't want to mix it and then have to cart it a long way to get it over to your garden box. But you do want a little bit of room so you can work around it like I've got here. So let's move on. This is something called Mel's Mix. Now Mel is Mel Bartholomew. He's the guy who wrote Square Foot Gardening, which is really a revolutionary way to garden. We're not going to do that exactly here with our potato boxes, but we're going to use the same mix. And basically what it is, the dirt that you've got under the ground isn't all that great, especially if you have a new house. What they do when they put in a new house, when they're putting in a subdivision, is they will scrape off all the topsoil, carry that away, put it in a stack somewhere and sell it to people who just bought new houses. Then they're going to build your house and they're going to dig that foundation pit, and that foundation pit has a whole bunch of clay and junk in it, and that's going to be spread around your yard. And then after that, if you want nice topsoil to grow your grass, you've got to buy it back from somebody else's construction project. So not all that great. You can build good soil. It takes a long time. In fact, it takes about 7 years, and most people, by the time they've lived in one place for 7 years, they're ready to move on and get another place and start all over again. So what we're going to do is we're going to stack the deck in our favor. So how do we do that? First of all, we want a nice, light, friable soil. Friable means you can stick your hands into it and work it, and it's nice and light and airy. So to do that, we use vermiculite. Now, vermiculite is a rock. And they take this rock, they mine it, they bake it at some ridiculously hot temperature until it pops just like popcorn, and I'll show you some of the characteristics of that. But basically it makes your soil nice and light and fluffy. Next, we've got peat moss. Now peat moss is basically, the stuff they dig out of peat bogs, and it's really good. It's not going to break down at all, ever, because it's inert. It's already done all the decomposing that it's going to do, but it's nice organic soil, or organic material, and that's going to have a good base. It's also going to help retain moisture, which is very important in a raised garden bed. And last is your compost. Now this isn't real compost. This is called soil pep. It's kind of a mulch and kind of a compost put together. It's not that great, but it's what I've used in the past, so we're going to go ahead and use it here. I'm also going to amend it with some of the compost that I cooked from last season. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Now, the ratio of this is somewhat important. You do 1 to 1 to 1 in volume, which means you got to have 2 bags of this soil pep. So to look at this, that's 2 cubic feet. It's 3.8 cubic feet. And that one, I don't know how many cubic feet it is, but it's at right around 3.84 cubic feet somewhere. So we want to have basically the same ratio of all of these put together. So I'm going to go ahead and open these bags up, and we're going to start the mixing process, and I'll check in with you to show you how we do that and some tips and tricks. Alright, so let's take a look. First of all, we have our vermiculite, and you can see how light and airy and fluffy it is. It's also very shiny, and you can find some of these pieces that, there's a good example. See that, how it's all squishy? Just very, very porous. So that is very nice. Now, you notice it kind of is very airy, so you don't want to be spreading this or mixing this on a windy day. Also, over here, your peat is very light and fluffy, and it will blow away and get all over the place. This is a little bit moist, and I like it that way because it's easier to control. And then this is what we're using for our compost. Again, not real compost. If you've got real compost, that's better, but this will get us by. So let's go ahead and start mixing. Okay, so here is Spencer, and he has been helping me mix everything all together and eating a little in the process. Don't recommend that, but he seems to enjoy it. So what we've done is, I noticed my tarp wasn't quite big enough to use the folding method, where you get a couple people and you just take the mix and you fold it on top of itself from corner to corner. By doing that, it kind of mixes everything for you. It takes a while to do. It's pretty heavy. So what we did is we just got in here and got our hands dirty and mixed all this up by hand. Pretty much it's just breaking up the clumps of peat moss and mixing the three components together. So now let's go ahead and start putting it into our box. Okay, now if you remember from our last video when we put all this together, there are these little Velcro tabs, and they actually do a really good job holding this top down. We'll just go ahead and take that off, and then we'll be able to take the entire top off of this little mini greenhouse. Just as easy as that. Now, I've stored all of my stuff down inside, and even though we've had rain and even snow, you can see it did a pretty good job keeping the inside of that pretty dry. So we're going to go ahead, you can see the cardboard in there from the packaging. We're going to use that as our weed barrier. We're just going to go ahead and start putting the mix in the box. Now my ground underneath the box wasn't completely level, so what I've done is I filled in some of the bigger gaps on the edges with some of the packing tissue that came with that growing dome, the greenhouse dome for the top of the box. So those will eventually decompose and become part of the soil, but for the time being it's going to keep my soil inside the box and keep it from going outside. Alright, now as you can see, we've got this box filled up about halfway. It's right up to the about the middle of those dots all the way around. Now, those dots are actually part of the manufacturing process. They're what give the box some rigidity and also some insulating value. But what we're going to do is we're going to stop filling it up for right now, and we're going to go ahead and put our seed potatoes in. So let's go over and look at those potatoes. So we're going to be planting potatoes in this box. That's a potato. And I forgot to save one of the potatoes of the variety that we're going to be planting. This is actually a Yukon Gold, and this is a red style. It's not gold, as you can tell. The Yukons are usually used for mashing, where the reds are usually used for stewing or just eating raw or making baked potatoes out of. But they're basically the same. You've got a skin, on that skin you've got eyes, and yeah, just all kinds of cool stuff. So you don't just take one of these potatoes and throw it in the ground. I mean, you could, but that's probably not going to be all that advantageous, and that's where you get what's called a seed potato. You take your potato and you cut it up into little pieces, and as long as you have a bit of meat down in here and at least one of these eyes, see if I can get that really good for you, you're good. Now you usually want to have 2 or 3 eyes, so there's another eye on this one, and looks like another one right down there. So those eyes are where the stalks, the stems are going to come out of, that are going to turn into where the leaves grow. So what we do is we go ahead and we chop this up. Generally, if you've got a small potato, you can quarter it. These I was able to cut into 6 or 8 pieces, and you can see what it looks like. Now, one thing that you may want to do, here's a trick for you, is if you just cut it, you'll notice that the potato will start to bleed. It'll actually have this clear liquid that comes out of it, and that's just fine. That's just the potato juice. But when you take that and throw it in the ground, you've got that moisture that soaks into the soil around it. When it does that, you can get various types of stuff. You can get some molding, you can get some mildew, you can get some stuff that you don't like. So what I recommend is you take your potato, you cut it the night before you're going to plant it, and you just leave it out in I've got a drawer, an old drawer like this. You can put it on a cookie tray, just something where there's going to be some air circulation. That way it's going to form kind of a film on the outside of the the potato, kind of like a thin skin. And that's going to stop a lot of the problems that just dropping this seed into the bed would normally do. So the next thing, of course, is to go ahead and plant these. Okay, so here you can see we've got our potato seeds all laid out. I usually plant them about a foot apart. So in a 4x4 box like this, we can have 16 plants going. And really that's, you could plant them a little bit closer than that. Some people would say plant them a little bit further apart than that. I've had good luck with this spacing. You do what works best for you. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and fill all the way up to that first line with soil that we just mixed up. And once we have that done, we're going to go ahead and put the lid back on and see how it does. Now, that's the first part. Second part, you can see we've been cleaning out this other potato box. We're going to repeat the process in our old box, just to show you what this soil mix looks like. There it is. We got a little bit of straw in it from the winter time, but very moist without being soggy, good drainage, clumps together really well without sticking all that stuff. But it's very easy to work in, so you can pull weeds out very easily, all kinds of good stuff. In fact, that looks like a old piece of potato that was in there from last year. You can see how nice that looks, and it's fresh. We haven't done anything with it at all. Before we plant in this box, we are going to put some of our compost in. Anytime you replant in one of these boxes, you want to add in a spadeful of, or a trowelful rather, of compost into that square foot that you're replanting. So in one of these, you've got 16 square feet. You'd want to put 16 of those trowels full. Of course, a little bit more is not going to hurt, and that's going to replenish the nutrients that the plant took out. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and then to wrap this whole thing up, I'll show you both the beds all planted and ready to go. This one doesn't have a cover on top of it, and the other one does, so we're going to see which one does better. The only other difference being this is older, established soil, whereas the other box is brand new. Alright, so here is the old box, or last year's box. This is the one that I've been growing potatoes in for several years now. Now, what I told you before is I was going to go ahead and leave the soil in that box, but I've gone ahead and removed the majority of it and put the rest of my new mix on the top, just because I'm trying to keep as many variables, or I'm trying to keep it down to as few variables as possible. So we're growing in the same medium. We're growing them right next to one another. You can see right there, they're just feet away. The difference is, of course, this one, other than a little bit of soil down at the bottom, and of course it being made out of wood that's starting to break down as wood does, is this one is definitely a lot more stylish, and of course has this nice greenhouse tint over the top that should help keep moisture in, so I shouldn't have to water this bed quite as much, and it's going to keep the heat in, which means that we should get better progress and bigger plants right off the bat using the Lifetime product rather than using the old, just screwed together wood box. But it's going to be an interesting adventure to see. Now, like I mentioned up front, I was trying to get all this done so that we could have potatoes in the ground just after St. Patrick's Day, which is right around the right time of year most of the time for us up here in Utah, but due to the weather was unable to do so. In fact, it was supposed to storm pretty good today. It's pretty overcast. It's about 45 degrees outside Fahrenheit, so it's still relatively chilly, but at least it's not raining and not snowing. So there you go. The experiment has begun. Now, next video, see all this stuff that I've got? That's the top dressing that I pulled off of my potato bed. And this is old corn stalks from last year out of that bed. Well, what I'm going to do, show you the whole bed here. What I'm going to do is, see right down there? It's a Lifetime composter. And it does really, really well, but it's really, really big. It's so big that I can't fill it up. So that is where I'm going. Well, last year I put all of my compost in there, and now I have fresh compost ready to use out of that. So I'm going to go ahead and empty that out. Use my compost, and then I am going to get see that compost pile right on the other side there. I'm going to take that and put it into a different model of Lifetime composter. And that way I can have two composters, one that I'm adding stuff to and one that I'm just spinning to let it cook. So it should be a little bit better. But there you go. That's going to be the next video, showing you that brand new square style Lifetime composter. We'll just do a little bit of a walk around of the garden here so you can see what we've got and see what we turned it into. Going to be a great adventure. Again, a big thanks to Lifetime Products for donating the use of this Lifetime garden box to me this year. It's going to be fun to follow this throughout the growing season and see how it turns out, even though it's approaching the end of April, so we're about a month and a half behind where we want to be with growing, weather notwithstanding. But for Path to Greener Living, showing off the Lifetime garden bed, I'm Joe Levi.